He was wearing a $50 hoodie, so she treated him like he was worth nothing. A senior flight attendant on a transatlantic flight made the biggest mistake of her career when she slapped a young black passenger for refusing to give up his first-class seat. She thought she was keeping the cabin safe. She thought he was nobody. But when he calmly wiped the blood from his lip and made one single phone call, he didn't just call a lawyer. He called the man who owned the bank that held the airline's debt. Within 10 minutes, the pilot received a terrifying order. Shut it down. This is the story of Marcus Sterling and the slap that cost an airline $400 million. The air inside JFK's Terminal 4 was thick with the scent of overpriced coffee and anxiety. It was a chaotic Tuesday evening, the kind where delays cascaded like dominoes and tempers were shorter than the flight time to Boston. But for Marcus Sterling, the noise was just background static. Marcus adjusted his slate-grey hoodie, pulling the fabric slightly over his forehead. He was exhausted. He had just spent 72 hours in a coding bunker in Silicon Valley, finalizing the encryption architecture for a new decentralized banking protocol. He hadn't slept in 2 days. He hadn't shaved in 3. To the untrained eye, he looked like a college dropout who had rolled out of bed and wandered into an international airport. He walked toward Gate B32, clutching a battered leather duffel bag. It was a vintage piece, handmade in Italy, but it was scuffed enough that people assumed it was a thrift store find. He wasn't trying to hide who he was, he just didn't care. At 26 years old, Marcus was the youngest executive board member of the Sterling Group, a private equity firm that quietly managed assets larger than the GDP of small European nations. But today, he just wanted to sleep. He approached the gate for Crown Airways Flight 902 to Zurich. The line for economy was a serpentine beast winding back toward the food court. The lane for first class and Crown Elite members was empty, save for a velvet rope and a woman standing guard like a sentry at the gates of hell. Her name tag read Lydia. She was tall, with hair sprayed into a blonde helmet that defied gravity, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was tapping her tablet with a manicured nail, checking the manifest. Marcus stepped into the first-class lane. Lydia didn't even look up from her screen. She just held up a hand, palm out. Economy boarding is in Zone 4, sir. The line starts back there. She pointed vaguely over his shoulder without making eye contact. Marcus stopped. He was used to this. It was the hoodie tax. "I'm on this flight," he said, his voice low and raspy from lack of use. "I have a ticket." Lydia finally looked up. Her eyes swept over him. The sneakers, the stubble, the hoodie. Her lip curled slightly, a micro-expression of disgust she probably didn't even know she was making. "This is the priority lane," she said, articulating the words slowly, as if speaking to a child. "It is for first-class passengers and Diamond status members only. Please join the general boarding group." "I know what lane this is," Marcus said, keeping his cool. He pulled his phone from his pocket and pulled up the QR code. "I'm in seat 1A. Lydia scoffed. It was an audible, sharp sound. "Seat 1A. That's a reserved bulkhead suite." She snatched the phone from his hand, her movement aggressive, expecting to see a fake screenshot or an economy ticket he was trying to upgrade. She scanned it. The machine at her podium beeped a happy, green confirmation. "Passenger, Sterling M. Seat, 1A, status, invitation only." Lydia stared at the screen. The machine didn't lie, but her prejudice was stronger than the software. She looked back at him, narrowing her eyes. "System error," she muttered. "Wait here." "Is there a problem?" Marcus asked, reaching for his phone back. "I said wait," she snapped, pulling the phone away. "Tickets like this don't just happen. I need to verify you didn't purchase this with a stolen credit card. We've had a lot of fraud lately. Marcus let out a long breath. Check whatever you want, but the flight board's in 10 minutes, and I'd like to get settled. While Lydia aggressively typed on her keyboard, a man in a bespoke navy suit walked up behind Marcus. He smelled of expensive scotch and entitlement. This was Brock Halloway. He was holding a tumescent leather briefcase and checking a heavy gold watch. "What's the hold-up, Lydia?" Brock boomed. He clearly flew this route often enough to know the staff. Lydia's face transformed instantly. The scowl vanished, replaced by a fawning, sickeningly sweet smile. "Oh, Mr. Halloway. So good to see you again. My apologies. We just have a security check with this passenger. I didn't want to let him through until we were sure." Brock looked at Marcus, looking him up and down with a sneer. "Security check? Looks like he's lost. Probably looking for the bus station." Lydia giggled. She actually giggled. "I'm just verifying the payment method. It's highly irregular." "I bought the ticket with an Amex Centurion," Marcus said, his patience thinning. "And I'd appreciate my phone back." "Don't take that tone with me," Lydia hissed, her mask slipping again. "I can deny you boarding for aggression." "He's being aggressive, Lydia," Brock chimed in, stepping around Marcus as if he were a pile of trash. "I saw it. Threatening behavior. You should probably keep him off. We don't want trouble at 30,000 feet. "Go ahead, Mr. Halloway," Lydia said, waving the man through. "I'll handle this." Brock brushed past Marcus, intentionally bumping his shoulder hard. "Watch it, boy," Brock muttered. Marcus didn't move. He was built like a linebacker under that hoodie, a result of boxing to manage his stress, and Brock bounced off him like he'd hit a brick wall. Brock stumbled, straightened his suit, glared, and marched down the jet bridge. Lydia finally handed the phone back to Marcus. She hadn't found anything wrong. She couldn't. But she wasn't done. "Fine," she said, her voice tight. "You're cleared. But let me make one thing crystal clear. I am the purser on this flight. One toe out of line, one loud noise, one disturbance, and I will have you restrained. Do you understand me?" Marcus looked her dead in the eye. "I just want to sleep, Lydia." "It's Miss Vance to you," she spat. "Go." Marcus walked down the jet bridge. He thought the worst was over. He was wrong. The humiliation was just the appetizer. The main course was waiting for him in seat 1A. The first-class cabin of the Boeing 777 was a sanctuary of soft lighting and cream-colored leather. It was designed to make the wealthy feel safe from the world below. But when Marcus stepped onto the plane, the atmosphere was already tense. He turned left toward the single-seat suites. He located 1A. It was occupied. Brock Halloway, the man from the gate, was sitting in Marcus's seat. He had already taken his jacket off, kicked his shoes off, and was sipping a glass of pre-flight champagne. His briefcase was on the floor, blocking the aisle. Marcus checked his phone again. Definitely 1A. He took a deep breath. "Excuse me," Marcus said politely. "I think you're in my seat." Brock didn't look up from his financial newspaper. "There are plenty of seats, kid. Go find an empty one in the back." "I paid for 1A, Marcus said, stepping closer. "And the flight is full. You need to move." Brock finally lowered the paper. He looked amused. "I'm Brock Halloway. I've flown Crown Airways for 15 years. I always sit in 1A. The gate agent made a mistake giving it to someone like you. So why don't you be a good lad and go ask the stewardess for a seat in economy? I'm sure that's where you belong anyway." Passengers were starting to watch. A couple across the aisle whispered. The tension was palpable. Marcus pressed the call button overhead. Lydia appeared almost instantly, marching down the aisle with purpose. She saw Marcus standing over Brock, and her face hardened. "I told you, she said, her voice rising so the whole cabin could hear. "I told you no disturbances. You haven't even taken off yet and you're harassing passengers." "He's in my seat," Marcus said calmly. "Check the manifest." Lydia didn't check the manifest. She looked at Brock, who gave her a charming, helpless shrug. "He's demanding I move, Lydia. He's quite aggressive. I feel threatened." Lydia turned on Marcus, pointing a long finger at his chest. "Sir, step away from Mr. Holloway immediately." "He is in my seat," Marcus repeated, his voice dropping an octave. "I paid $12,000 for this suite. Move him." "Mr. Holloway is a Diamond Legacy member," Lydia declared. "If he prefers this seat, we accommodate him. I can find you something in business class if you settle down. Otherwise, you're off the plane." "I'm not moving to business," Marcus said, "and I'm not getting off. I want what I paid for, and I want you to stop treating me like a criminal." "You are acting like one!" Lydia shouted. The mask was fully off now. She was playing to the audience, trying to show the wealthy patrons that she was protecting them from the intruder. "You think because you scraped together enough miles or stole a credit card you can come in here and bully our best customers?" "I own the card," Marcus said, his hands balling into fists at his sides. He was trembling, not from fear, but from the immense effort it took not to explode. "And if you don't move him, I will call the airport police and file a report for theft of service." That triggered her, the threat to her authority in her domain. Lydia stepped into his personal space. She was close enough that he could smell her hairspray. "You listen to me, you little punk. You don't make demands on my plane. You take the seat I give you, or I have you dragged off in cuffs." "Move him," Marcus said. He didn't shout. He didn't scream. He just held his ground. Brock laughed. "He's deaf, Lydia. Or maybe he just doesn't understand English well." Marcus looked at Brock. "Get up, now." Lydia snapped. Whether it was the stress of the day, the entitlement of her position, or pure, unadulterated racism, something in her brain short-circuited. She saw a young black man challenging her authority in front of her high-value clients, and she decided to put him in his place. She pulled her hand back and swung. Crack! The sound was like a gunshot in the pressurized cabin. Lydia slapped Marcus across the face with the full force of her body weight. Her ring caught his lip, tearing the skin. The cabin went dead silent. Even Brock stopped smiling. The couple across the aisle gasped. Marcus's head whipped to the side. He stumbled back a half step, catching himself on the wall of the galley. He tasted copper. He raised a hand and touched his mouth. His fingers came away red. Lydia stood there, breathing heavy, her hand stinging. For a second, she looked shocked at herself. But then she doubled down. She had to. I felt threatened," she screamed, her voice cracking. "He lunged at me. You all saw it. He lunged at me." She looked around the cabin for validation. "Mr. Holloway, you saw it, right?" Brock hesitated, then nodded. Yes, absolutely. Self-defense. The boy went crazy." Marcus stood up straight. He took a slow breath. He didn't swing back. He didn't shout. He reached into his hoodie pocket. "Don't you reach for a weapon!" Lydia shrieked, backing away. Marcus pulled out a handkerchief and dabbed his lip. Then he pulled out his phone. "Get the captain," Lydia yelled to a junior flight attendant who was watching in horror from the galley. "And call the air marshals. I want this man arrested for assault." Marcus unlocked his phone. His hands were steady. He ignored Lydia. He ignored Brock. He ignored the blood on his chin. He scrolled to a contact labeled simply, "Dad." He pressed dial. Lydia was still screaming orders, but Marcus just held the phone to his ear. "Hey," Marcus said when the line connected. The cabin was quiet enough that those nearby could hear him. "Yeah, I'm at JFK. Crown Airways Flight 902. No, I'm not coming. I need you to do something for me. Yeah. The revolving credit facility we hold for Crown. No, don't pull it. Call it in. Immediately. He paused, listening. I don't care if it bankrupts them, Dad. The purser just assaulted me. Yeah. Blood. Okay. I'm waiting. Marcus ended the call. He looked at Lydia, whose face had gone from red to a confused, pale white. You have about 5 minutes, Marcus said softly. I suggest you start packing your bag. The silence that followed Marcus's phone call was heavy, a suffocating blanket that settled over the first-class cabin. Lydia Vance stood frozen near the galley, her chest heaving, her eyes darting between Marcus and the passengers, witnessing her unraveling. The red mark on Marcus's lip was vibrant against his skin, a damning piece of evidence that she was already trying to erase from reality in her mind. He's bluffing, Brock Holloway scoffed, breaking the tension. He picked up his champagne glass, though his hand wasn't quite as steady as before. Calling his daddy, please. Probably calling a bail bondsman. Lydia, get this thug off the plane so we can take off. I have a dinner reservation in Zurich. Lydia snapped back to the present. The fear of what she had done was quickly replaced by the familiar, comforting armor of her authority. She was the purser. She was in charge. And this boy in the hoodie was the aggressor. That was the story. That was the only story that would save her job. She grabbed the interphone handset, her fingers trembling as she punched in the code for the cockpit. Captain, we have a code red in the forward cabin. Passenger assault on a crew member. I need port authority immediately. I am shaken up. He's unstable. Marcus didn't move. He didn't try to run. He didn't try to argue with Brock. He simply sat on the ottoman of the suite across the aisle, an empty seat, and waited. He pulled a tissue from his pocket, dabbing the cut on his lip again. He checked his watch. It was a Patek Philippe, but he wore the face on the inside of his wrist, so no one saw it. 2 minutes later, the heavy thud of boots echoed on the jet bridge. The passengers in economy were craning their necks, trying to see what was holding up the flight. Whispers of terrorist and drunk passenger floated through the curtain. Perception was already doing the work for Lydia. 3 Port Authority officers burst into the cabin. They were led by Officer Drake, a man with a buzz cut and a jaw set in granite. He scanned the scene, looking for the threat. His eyes skipped over Brock in his suit. They skipped over Lydia in her uniform. They landed squarely on Marcus. "Hands!" Drake barked, his hand resting on his holster. "Let me see your hands." "Now." Marcus slowly raised his open palms. "I'm the one who was assaulted, officer." "Shut your mouth," Drake snapped, advancing down the aisle. "Stand up, turn around." "Officer, thank God you're here," Lydia cried out, rushing forward. She played the victim with Oscar-worthy dedication, clutching her chest. "He went crazy. He demanded a seat he didn't pay for, and when I asked him to check his ticket, he lunged at me. He tried to hit me. I had to push him away." "She slapped him," a woman's voice rang out from seat 2A. It was an older woman with silver hair, looking horrified. "She slapped him across the face. He didn't touch her." Officer Drake paused, looking at the woman. Then he looked at Brock. Brock shook his head solemnly. "That lady is mistaken, officer. Things happened fast. The boy was aggressive. He got in the stewardess's face. She was defending herself. I saw the whole thing. I'm Brock Holloway, CEO of Holloway Distinct." He handed the officer a business card with a practiced flick of the wrist. Drake looked at the card, then back at Marcus. The calculus was simple in his mind. CEO in a suit versus kid in a hoodie. Flight attendant versus disruptive passenger. "Turn around," Drake repeated to Marcus, grabbing his shoulder and spinning him roughly. "I am complying," Marcus said, his voice deadly calm. But you are making a mistake. I want to file a report against Miss Vance for battery." "You can file whatever you want from the holding cell," Drake said. He kicked Marcus's legs apart and slapped the handcuffs on. The metal clicked shut, a sound of finality. Drake didn't go easy. He cinched the cuffs tight, biting into Marcus's wrists. He grabbed Marcus by the back of the hoodie and shoved him toward the exit. "Move." As they dragged Marcus past Lydia, she smirked. It was a quick, victorious twitch of her lips. She had won. The system protected its own, and she was part of the machinery. "You're banned from Crown Airways for life," Lydia hissed as he passed. "Have fun in jail." Marcus stopped. He planted his feet, resisting the officer's shove for just a second. He looked Lydia in the eyes. The blood on his lip had dried, but the look in his eyes was colder than the air outside the plane. "I'm not going to jail, Lydia," Marcus said. "And you're not going to Zurich." "Get him out of here," Brock yelled. "Garbage." Officer Drake shoved Marcus forward, nearly knocking him into the cockpit door. They hauled him down the jet bridge, past the staring eyes of the boarding passengers, past the gate agents who shook their heads in disgust. They brought him to the top of the jet bridge, where the terminal carpet met the industrial flooring. Drake pushed Marcus against the wall. "You got ID?" Drake asked, patting Marcus's pockets. "Front right pocket," Marcus said. Drake reached in and pulled out a slim, black metal card wallet. He slid out a driver's license. He looked at it. Then he froze. He looked closer. He squinted at the address. 1000 Sterling Estate Doctor, Atherton, CA. Drake frowned. He pulled out another card. It wasn't a credit card. It was a black titanium card with a microchip and no numbers, just the logo of the Sterling Group and the word Director. "What is this?" Drake asked, holding up the card. "That," Marcus said, leaning his head back against the wall, "is the reason your radio is about to go off." As if on cue, Drake's radio crackled. "Dispatch to Unit 4 Alpha. Come in, Drake. Drake here. I've got the suspect in custody, transporting to booking." There was a pause on the radio, a long, static-filled pause. "Negative, Unit 4 Alpha. Hold your position. Do not, I repeat, do not transport. The chief is coming down." Drake blinked. "The chief? Chief O'Malley is at home. It's Tuesday night." "The chief is on the line, Drake, and he's screaming. He says you have a Marcus Sterling in custody?" Drake looked at the ID in his hand. He looked at the kid in the hoodie. A cold bead of sweat trickled down his spine beneath his uniform. "Yeah, I got him. Uncuff him. Now. And apologize. The commissioner just called the precinct. The governor is on the other line. I don't know what is going on, Drake, but uncuff him before we all get fired." Drake stared at the radio. He looked at Marcus. Marcus didn't smile. He just held up his wrists. "I think you have the wrong key, officer. You might want to hurry. My dad gets impatient." Inside the plane, Lydia was smoothing her skirt. She was shaking, the adrenaline crash hitting her, but she felt triumphant. She walked into the cockpit. "He's gone, Captain," she said to the pilot, Captain Jeffrey Thorne. "Police took him. We can push back as soon as we get his bag off." Captain Thorne didn't answer. He was staring at the flight computer. His co-pilot, a young man named Evans, was frantically tapping on his iPad. "Captain?" Lydia asked. Thorne turned around. His face was grey. "We can't push back, Lydia." "Why? Did we miss our slot?" "No," Thorne whispered. "The flight plan. It's gone." 10 minutes earlier, 3,000 miles away in a glass skyscraper in Charlotte, North Carolina, a man named Thomas Sterling sat in an office that cost more than the airplane Marcus was sitting on. Thomas was the CEO of the Sterling Group. He was a man who moved mountains with whispers. He didn't yell. He didn't throw tantrums. He simply adjusted the flow of capital in the global market like a plumber turning a valve. When Marcus had called, Thomas hadn't asked for details. He knew his son. Marcus was stoic, pragmatic, and hated conflict. If Marcus was calling to say, "Call it in," it meant a line had been crossed that could not be uncrossed. Thomas picked up his secure line and dialed a number that bypassed the receptionists and executive assistants of the Global Bank of Commerce. He dialed the direct cell phone of the bank's chairman. "Thomas," the chairman answered. "It's late. Everything okay?" "Arthur," Thomas said, his voice smooth as silk. "Crown Airways. We hold the senior secured debt on their operating fleet, don't we? The revolving credit facility for their fuel and gate leases." "Yes, of course. It's a massive portfolio. Why?" "They just assaulted my son," Thomas said. He said it as casually as if he were commenting on the weather. A purser on Flight 902 slapped Marcus in the face and had him arrested for sitting in his own seat. Silence on the other end. Then a sharp intake of breath. "Thomas, surely there's a misunderstanding. I can call the CEO of Crown. I can get him to—" "No," Thomas interrupted. "I don't want an apology, Arthur. I want a default notice. Crown is in breach of the moral clause of our lending agreement. Section 4, Paragraph C. Reputational harm necessitating immediate liquidity preservation." "Thomas, if we call that loan, it triggers a cross-default on their fuel hedges. It will freeze their accounts. They won't be able to buy kerosene. The whole fleet stops." "I know," Thomas said. "Execute it. Now, or the Sterling Group moves its $40 billion of liquidity out of your bank by morning." It was a nuclear threat, and Arthur knew Thomas wasn't bluffing. "Okay," Arthur said, his voice shaking. "Okay, Thomas, I'm making the call." Back in the cockpit of Flight 902, the systems were dying. Captain Thorne watched as the ACR screen, the text messaging system used by pilots, lit up with a message that made no sense. "System alert. Company ops suspended. Do not push back. Return to gate. Engines off." "What the hell does that mean?" First Officer Evans asked. Then the radio crackled. It wasn't the tower. It was ground operations. "Crown 902, this is ground. We have a problem. The fuel truck just pulled away. The driver says his company card was declined. He's been ordered to cease fueling immediately." Thorne grabbed the mic. "Say again, ground. Declined? We have a corporate contract." "I know, Cap, but the fuel dispatch says your credit line is frozen. Insolvent status is what the screen says. And, tower just called. They're revoking your slot. You have to shut down." Thorne felt sick. He turned to Lydia, who was still standing in the doorway, confused. "Lydia," Thorne said, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. "What exactly happened back there?" "I told you," she stammered. "The passenger, he was—" "Did you touch him?" Thorne asked quietly. I defended myself." Thorne stared at her. He had flown for 30 years. He knew how the airline industry worked. It ran on razor-thin margins and massive lines of credit. If that money stopped flowing for even an hour, the airline died. "Operations just sent a fleet-wide ground stop," Thorne said, pointing at the screen. "Fuel is cut off. The money is gone. Someone just pulled the plug on the entire airline, Lydia. Who was that passenger?" Lydia's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Outside the window, chaos was erupting. The ramp workers, who usually moved with sluggish indifference, were stopping their vehicles. They were checking their phones. Text messages were flying across the airport. Crown Airways bankrupt? Paychecks bouncing? At the gate counter inside the terminal, the computers went black. The boarding pass scanners let out a long, mournful beep and powered down. The screens displaying flight times flickered and switched to a generic "Please wait" logo. And then, the lights in the jet bridge flickered. At the top of the jet bridge, Officer Drake had just unlocked the handcuffs. He was pale. He handed Marcus his phone back. "Mr. Sterling," Drake said, his voice cracking. I apologize. I was given false information. You're free to go." Marcus rubbed his wrists. He didn't look at Drake. He looked down the jet bridge, back toward the plane. "I'm not going anywhere yet," Marcus said. "I need my bag." "I'll get it for you," Drake said quickly. "I'll go right now." "No," Marcus said. "I'll get it." Marcus walked back down the jet bridge. He wasn't being dragged this time. He walked with the slow, terrifying confidence of a man who owns the building. He stepped back onto the plane. The first-class cabin was murmuring. They saw Marcus return, sans handcuffs, rubbing his wrists. They saw the police officer trailing behind him like a chastised puppy. Lydia was standing by seat 1A, talking to Brock. She looked up and saw Marcus. Her face went slack. "You," she whispered. "How are you back?" Marcus didn't answer her. He walked past her, ignoring her completely, and stopped at seat 1A. Brock Holloway looked up, his champagne glass halfway to his mouth. He looked at Marcus, then at the officer behind him. "What is this?" Brock demanded. "Why is he back?" "Lydia, I thought we got rid of the trash." Marcus looked down at Brock. "Mr. Holloway," Marcus said, "you have a choice. You can stay in that seat. But I should warn you, this plane isn't going to Zurich. It's not going anywhere. In fact, if you check your phone, you'll find that your return ticket has likely been cancelled, along with every other ticket on this airline." Brock frowned. He pulled his phone out of his pocket. He saw the news alert flashing on his screen. "Breaking. Crown Airways assets frozen. Global Bank recalls 4BN loan. Airline ceases operations immediately." Brock's jaw dropped. He looked at Marcus. The realization hit him like a physical blow. The hoodie, the calm demeanor, the name. Sterling. "Sterling," Brock whispered. "The Sterling Group?" "Get out of my seat," Marcus said. Brock scrambled. He didn't argue. He didn't make a witty comeback. He grabbed his briefcase, knocking over his champagne in the process, and practically climbed over the armrest to get into the aisle. He looked at Marcus with pure fear. Marcus sat down in seat 1A. He looked up at Lydia. She was trembling so hard her knees were knocking together. She was holding the bulkhead for support. "The captain is coming out to talk to you, Lydia," Marcus said softly. "I think he wants to know why he just lost his pension." Lydia looked at the cockpit door as it swung open. Captain Thorne stepped out. He wasn't wearing his hat. He looked furious. He looked at Marcus, then he looked at Lydia. "You," Thorne snarled at Lydia, pointing a finger that shook with rage. "Pack your things. You're off my plane. You're off every plane." Lydia began to sob. "I didn't know. He was wearing a hoodie. I didn't know." "That's the problem, Lydia," Marcus said, buckling his seatbelt even though the plane was dead. "You didn't care to know. You just saw what you wanted to see." Marcus closed his eyes. "Now, if everyone could please get off. I'm going to wait here until my dad calls back to tell me he's bought the airline. I have some firing to do." The shutdown of Crown Airways didn't just affect Flight 902. It rippled through the global aviation network like a cardiac arrest. Within 45 minutes of Thomas Sterling's phone call, the scene inside JFK Terminal 4 had transformed from a busy travel hub into a refugee camp of angry, confused elites. Inside the cabin of the grounded Boeing 777, the air was getting stale. The auxiliary power unit had been cut to save fuel, and the air conditioning was dying. The silence of the engines was replaced by the cacophony of ringtones. Every passenger in first class was on the phone, screaming at assistants, travel agents, or spouses. But in row 1, there was a strange, terrifying calm. Marcus remained in seat 1A. He had reclined the seat manually and was reading a PDF on his phone, seemingly oblivious to the chaos he had orchestrated. Lydia Vance was no longer screaming. She was sitting on a jump seat near the galley, her face buried in her hands. The reality of her situation was setting in. She wasn't just losing her job, she was losing her identity. She had been the queen of the cabin for 20 years. Now she was a liability. Captain Thorne emerged from the cockpit again. He looked 10 years older than he had an hour ago. He held a tablet in his hand. "They're towing us," Thorne announced to the cabin, his voice flat. "Not to the gate, to a remote stand. The airport authority wants this plane away from the terminal. Apparently we're a crime scene." "A crime scene?" Brock Holloway sputtered from the aisle, where he was still trying to gather his scattered belongings. "This is ridiculous. I'm a victim here. I've been inconvenienced." "Sit down, Holloway," Thorne snapped. The deference was gone. "The police are coming back aboard. Not for him." He pointed at Marcus. "For her." He pointed at Lydia. Lydia looked up, her mascara running in dark streaks down her pale cheeks. "Captain, Jeffrey, please, you can't let them arrest me. It was a mistake. I was stressed. The Union will protect me." "The Union?" Thorne laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Lydia, check the news. The Union reps aren't answering the phone. They're too busy trying to figure out if their pension fund just evaporated. You didn't just slap a passenger. You slapped the son of the man who owns the bank that lends us money. You are radioactive." As the tug began to pull the massive jet backward, a new sound filled the cabin, a video playing on someone's phone. It was the silver-haired woman in seat 2A. She was holding her phone up, watching a clip on social media. "Oh my God," the woman whispered. "It's everywhere." "What is?" Brock asked, leaning over. "The video," she said. "Someone in economy filmed it through the curtain gap. Look." She turned the screen. The video was shaky, but the audio was crystal clear. It showed Lydia standing over Marcus. It showed her screaming. It showed Marcus sitting calmly. And then it showed the slap. The sound of the impact was sickeningly loud on the phone speaker. The caption on the tweet, which already had 200,000 retweets, read, "Crown Airways, purser assaults passenger for not flying while black. Boycott immediately." Lydia saw the screen and let out a wail of despair. "No, no." "You're famous, Miss Vance," Marcus said from his seat. He didn't turn his head. "I'd suggest you stay off Twitter. The internet detectives are very thorough. They probably found your address in Long Island by now." The plane shuddered to a halt on the tarmac, far away from the terminal buildings. A staircase truck pulled up. Blue lights flashed against the fuselage. The door opened. This time, it wasn't the Port Authority. It was the FBI. 2 agents in windbreakers marked FBI stepped onto the plane. The jurisdictional shift happened because the assault occurred on an aircraft preparing for international travel. It was a federal matter now. "Lydia Vance?" the lead agent asked. Lydia stood up, her legs wobbling. I want a lawyer." "You'll need one," the agent said. "You're under arrest for interference with a flight crew member and assault in a special aircraft jurisdiction. Cuff her." As they marched Lydia down the aisle, she passed Marcus. She stopped. Desperation clawed at her throat. "Please," she begged, her voice a broken whisper. "Mr. Sterling, I have kids. I have a mortgage. Please, just tell your father to stop. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll do anything." Marcus finally looked at her. His eyes were void of sympathy. He saw the bully she had been 10 minutes ago. He saw the prejudice she had worn like a badge of honor. "You have kids?" Marcus asked softly. "Yes. 2 boys." "Please." "Then you should have taught them better than to judge a book by its cover," Marcus said. "And you definitely should have taught yourself not to slap people. Goodbye, Lydia." They dragged her off the plane. Brock Holloway tried to sneak out behind the agents. "I'm just going to go." "Hold on," the FBI agent said, blocking Brock's path. "You're a material witness, and we have reports you filed a false police statement claiming the victim was the aggressor. You're coming with us too. Obstruction of justice is a felony." "But I'm Brock Holloway," he shrieked as they grabbed his arm. "Yeah," Marcus called out, "and my dad probably buys companies like yours for spare parts. Enjoy federal custody, Brock." The cabin was finally empty of the antagonists. Marcus sat alone in the quiet luxury of first class. He picked up his phone and dialed his father. "It's done," Marcus said. "Not yet." Thomas Sterling's voice came back, rich and powerful. "The stock just halted trading. It dropped 60% in 20 minutes. The board of directors is panic calling me. They want a lifeline." "What are you going to offer them?" Marcus asked. "I'm not offering a lifeline, son," Thomas said. "I'm offering an execution. I'm buying the airline, pennies on the dollar. But I need you to stay on that plane. Physically occupy the asset. Can you do that?" Marcus looked around the empty suite. He looked at the champagne bottle Brock had knocked over. "Yeah," Marcus said. "I can wait. I've got legroom." The next 6 hours were a masterclass in corporate warfare. While Marcus napped in seat 1A, guarded by a confused but compliant flight crew who had realized their best chance of keeping their jobs was to keep the man in the hoodie happy, Thomas Sterling was dismantling Crown Airways. The Crown Airways board of directors met in an emergency Zoom call. They were desperate. The fuel shut-off meant the fleet was grounded globally. Passengers were rioting in London, Tokyo, and Dubai. The refund requests alone exceeded their cash reserves. Bankruptcy wasn't just looming, it had already kicked down the door. Thomas Sterling joined the call. He didn't turn on his camera. His avatar was just a black square. "Gentlemen and ladies," Thomas said, "you have a simple problem. You employ a culture of rot that culminated in the assault of a Sterling family member. That assault triggered a default. The default triggered a liquidity crisis. We fired the flight attendant," the chairman of the board pleaded. "We issued a public apology. We'll pay Marcus a settlement. $5 million. Just turn the credit line back on, Thomas." "Marcus doesn't want $5 million, Thomas said. "And I don't want an apology." "What do you want?" "I want the keys," Thomas said. "I'm making a tender offer for 51% of the controlling stock and a restructuring of the debt. I'm offering $2 a share." $2? The CFO choked. "We were trading at $45 this morning." "That was this morning," Thomas said coldly. "Before the world saw your purser slap a black man for sitting in a seat he paid for. Before the world realized your diamond legacy passengers like Mr. Holloway are allowed to abuse others. Your brand is toxic. $2 is a gift. It allows you to walk away with something. We can't accept that. It's a hostile takeover." "It's not hostile," Thomas corrected. "It's karmic. You have 30 minutes to accept, or I publicly announce that the Sterling Group is shorting the stock to zero, and we will tie you up in litigation for 10 years. You will lose your homes. You will lose your reputations. Or you sell to me, and I clean up your mess." The board muted their microphones. They argued, they screamed, but they looked at the news. The hashtag #RockBoycottCrown was trending #1 globally. The video of the slap had 50 million views. 28 minutes later, The chairman came back on the line. His voice was defeated. "We accept. We will prepare the press release." "Don't bother," Thomas said. "My son is already on the flagship aircraft. He'll handle the announcement." Back on the tarmac at JFK, the sun was beginning to rise over the bay. Light streamed into the cabin of Flight 902. Marcus woke up to the sound of vehicles approaching. He looked out the window. A convoy of black SUVs had pulled up to the stairs. A man in a sharp grey suit jogged up the stairs and entered the cabin. It was Arthur Pendleton, the family's chief legal counsel. He was holding a thick folder. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling," Arthur said, beaming. "Did you sleep well?" "Decently," Marcus said, stretching. "Did we get it?" Arthur handed him the folder. On the front, the logo of Crown Airways was already watermarked with a stamp. "Property of Sterling Aviation." "Signed, sealed, and delivered," Arthur said. "Your father bought the controlling stake at 4 Sales AM. The debt has been restructured into equity. Technically speaking, Marcus, you are currently sitting in your own airplane." Marcus stood up. He walked to the galley where the remaining crew members were huddled. They looked terrified. "Who is the senior crew member left?" Marcus asked. A young woman named Sarah raised her hand. I am, sir." "Okay, Sarah," Marcus said. "Get the pilot. Tell him to fuel the plane. We're going to Zurich." "But the flight is cancelled," Sarah said. "Not anymore," Marcus said. "It's a private charter now, and I'm reinstating the crew, except for Lydia, obviously. And tell the ground crew to bring the catering back. I'm starving." "What about the other passengers?" Sarah asked. "They were offloaded to the terminal." Marcus thought for a moment. "Board everyone in economy. Give them all a refund and a voucher for future travel. But the first-class cabin?" He looked at the empty seats where Brock and his snobby peers had sat. "Leave first class empty," Marcus said. "I want the cabin to myself. I have some work to do." 3 weeks later, the Crown Airways headquarters in Atlanta was a glass monolith that overlooked the runway. The main auditorium was packed with hundreds of corporate employees, managers, and department heads. They were terrified. The Sterling purge had been swift and brutal. Marcus stood on the stage. He wasn't wearing a hoodie today. He was wearing a bespoke Tom Ford suit, tailored to perfection. He looked every inch the billionaire air, but his eyes still held that dangerous, quiet intensity. Behind him, a giant screen displayed the new company mission statement: dignity, respect, service. "Some of you are worried about your jobs," Marcus began into the microphone. His voice echoed through the silent hall. "You should be. For a long time, this airline operated on a caste system. You treated people based on their clothes, their skin color, and their perceived net worth. That ends today." He clicked a remote. A picture of Lydia Vance appeared on the screen. A mug shot. She looked haggard, stripped of her makeup and her arrogance. "Lydia Vance is currently awaiting trial for federal assault," Marcus said. "She lost her pension. She lost her career. Because she thought she had the power to judge. She didn't." He clicked the remote again. A picture of Brock Halloway appeared. "Brock Halloway has been placed on the permanent no-fly list for every airline in the Sterling Alliance. He is currently being sued by us for defamation and flight disruption. Last I heard, his own board of directors fired him to distance themselves from the scandal." Marcus leaned forward on the podium. "I am implementing a new policy. It's called the Blind Service Protocol. Every passenger, whether they are in 1A or 45C, gets treated with human decency. If I hear one single report, of a crew member profiling a passenger based on appearance, you won't just be fired. I will make sure you never work in this industry again." The room was silent. "But," Marcus softened his tone, "if you do your job well, If you treat people right, we will take care of you. I'm raising the base pay for all cabin crew by 20% effective immediately." A gasp went through the room. Then tentative applause. Then thunderous cheering. Marcus walked off the stage. Arthur Pendleton met him in the wings. "Good speech," Arthur said. "Your dad is proud. By the way, there's someone waiting to see you in your office. She says she knows you." Marcus frowned. He walked to the executive elevator and went up to the top floor. He walked into the CEO's office. Sitting in the waiting area was Lydia Vance. She was out on bail. She looked small, broken. She stood up when he entered. "Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice trembling. I came to apologize, personally." Marcus stopped. He didn't invite her in. "I heard your apology on the plane, Lydia. It sounded a lot like you were sorry you got caught." "I am sorry," she wept. "I've lost everything. No one will hire me. I can't feed my kids. Please, I know you hate me, but show some mercy. You're a billionaire. You won. Is this not enough?" Marcus looked at her. He thought about the slap, the humiliation, the way she had looked at him like he was dirt. But he also thought about the power he held now. "I don't hate you, Lydia," Marcus said. "I don't think about you at all. But I'm not a monster." He pulled a card from his pocket. It wasn't a business card. It was a contact number for a staffing agency. "They hire custodial staff for the airport hangars," Marcus said, handing it to her. "It's minimum wage. You'll be scrubbing the floors of the planes you used to fly on. It's hard work. It's invisible work. People will walk past you and not look you in the eye. They'll treat you like you're nothing." Lydia took the card, her hands shaking. "Take the job," Marcus said. "Work there for a year. Feel what it's like to be invisible. If you can do that with dignity, come back and see me. Maybe then we'll talk about a second chance." He opened his office door. "Now get out of my building." Lydia nodded, tears streaming down her face, and walked away, clutching the card like a lifeline. Marcus walked into his office and looked out the window. A Crown Airways jet, his jet, was taking off, banking sharply into the clouds. He touched his lip. The cut had healed, but the memory was there. He had turned a slap into an empire. He sat down at his desk, opened his laptop, and finally, for the first time in days, he smiled. "System reboot complete," he whispered. And that is how a $50 hoodie and a prejudice-fueled mistake cost an airline its freedom. Lydia Vance learned the hard way that you never judge a passenger by their appearance, and Brock Holloway learned that money doesn't buy you immunity from karma. Marcus Sterling didn't just get his seat back, he bought the whole table. It's a brutal reminder that in the age of cameras and consequences, the little guy you're bullying might just be the one signing your paycheck tomorrow. What do you think? Did Marcus go too far by buying the airline, or was Lydia's punishment exactly what she deserved? And would you have offered her that janitorial job at the end? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of high-flying justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story about karma hitting back. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.